Almost got it. Just a little further, I grunted, struggling to balance the brightly colored, abstract sculpture on its pedestal. It was my latest acquisition, a swirling mass of metal and glass that I'd affectionately nicknamed the whimsical Whatsit. It was unique. It was bold. It was definitely going to annoy the HOA. And right on cue, like a beige-clad harbinger of doom, he appeared. He stood there, on the edge of my lawn, clipboard clutched to his chest like a shield, his face a mask of disapproval. He was the HOA representative, the enforcer of aesthetic conformity, well, I hadn't quite decided on a nickname for him yet, but it would definitely involve the word bland. I, Greg, am not some wild avant-garde artist. By day, I'm a mild-mannered accountant, and by night, I am a mild-mannered practitioner of the arts. I just enjoy a bit of flair, a touch of unconventionality, a way to express myself, to add a little color and personality to the otherwise monotonous landscape of Willow Creek. My front yard was my gallery. Not a huge gallery, mind you, just a few carefully chosen pieces. A whimsical metal sculpture of a cat chasing a butterfly, a mosaic bird bath made from recycled glass, a collection of brightly painted rocks arranged in a somewhat artistic pattern. Nothing too outrageous, nothing too offensive, just different. And different in Willow Creek was a dangerous word. "Mr. Miller?" the HOA representative said, his voice tight with barely suppressed disdain. "That's me," I said, finally managing to get the whimsical Whatsit balanced on its pedestal. "And you are—" "Mr. Bland," he replied, his name perfectly reflecting his personality. "From the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." "Ah," I said, already knowing where this was going. "Let me guess. Someone has a problem with my artistic vision?" Mr. Bland's eyes scanned my yard, taking in the cat sculpture, the bird bath, the painted rocks, and, of course, the newly installed whimsical Whatsit. His expression didn't change, but I could practically see his blood pressure rising. "Mr. Miller," he said, his voice strained, "we've received a complaint, several complaints actually, regarding your exterior decorations." "Decorations?" I repeated, feigning innocence. "You mean my art?" "These items," Mr. Bland said, emphasizing the word as if it were a contagious disease, "are in violation of community guidelines. They are inappropriate. They are unharmonious. They detract from the overall aesthetic of Willow Creek," he said. He went on to explain that they are lowering the property value. "Unharmonious?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "With what? The endless expanse of beige siding and perfectly manicured lawns?" I thought I was adding a little spice, a little life, I said. But the man was stone-faced. I had broken no rules in adding the art to my lawn. "Mr. Miller," Mr. Bland said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "The HOA has standards. We strive to maintain a certain aesthetic in Willow Creek, and frankly, your yard doesn't meet those standards." "So, what you're saying," I said, "is that my art is too interesting, too colorful, too me?" Mr. Bland simply handed me an official violation notice, informing me that I had 14 days to remedy the situation or face a fine. He then retreated, looking like he needed a strong drink and a long lie-down in a very, very beige room. The HOA meeting was, predictably, a kangaroo court of conformity. It was held in the Willow Creek Community Center, a room that seemed to have been designed to suck the joy out of any gathering. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige everything. The board members sat at a long table, looking like a collection of disapproving mannequins. And presiding over them all was Patricia. Patricia Pristine, the president of the Willow Creek HOA and the undisputed queen of all things bland. She was a woman who clearly believed that beige was the only acceptable color, that conformity was next to godliness, and that any deviation from her meticulously curated vision of suburban perfection was a personal affront. She was perfectly coiffed, dressed in a beige pantsuit, naturally, and her expression radiated an air of control and a deep-seated fear of anything different. She was, in short, my nemesis. "Mr. Miller," Patricia began, her voice sharp and accusatory, "your art has been brought to our attention." She said art as if it were a particularly unpleasant bodily function. "My art, Miss Pristine," I corrected, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. "It's just a few sculptures, a way to express myself, to add a little personality to my yard." "Personality?" Patricia scoffed. "Mr. Miller, this is Willow Creek. We don't do personality. We do harmony. We do uniformity. We do beige. But there's nothing in the bylaws that specifically prohibits yard art," I pointed out, trying a different tactic. "As long as it's not obscene or dangerous, I believe I'm within my rights." "The bylaws are open to interpretation, Mr. Miller," Patricia said with a smug smile. "And my interpretation is that your creations are eyesores. They're lowering property values. They're creating a disruptive atmosphere." "Disruptive?" I repeated, incredulous. "How are they disruptive? They're just sitting there, being artistic." "They're offensive, Mr. Miller," she declared. They're weird." She went on to explain that there will be a vote to add new rules preventing any art. I tried to reason with her. I explained that art was subjective, that beauty was in the eye of the beholder, and that my sculptures were a form of personal expression. I even pointed out that other neighborhoods encouraged public art, seeing it as a way to enhance community spirit and attract visitors. The other board members, a collection of mostly middle-aged men and women who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few of them, I noticed, were actually smiling at my sculptures, which were displayed in a series of photographs Patricia had helpfully provided. Perhaps they were secret art lovers, yearning to break free from the beige tyranny of Willow Creek. But Patricia? She was unmoved. "The art," she declared, slamming her gavel down with unnecessary force, "must be removed. You have 1 week, Mr. Miller, and you are hereby fined $300 for violating the community aesthetic standards of Willow Creek." Aesthetic standards? It was a yard. I walked out of that meeting, my blood boiling, my sense of injustice reaching critical levels. Patricia Pristine had declared war on my art. And I, Greg Miller, was not about to surrender. 1 week. That's all the time Patricia Pristine, in her infinite, beige-obsessed wisdom, had given me to remove my beloved yard art. 1 week to strip my garden of its personality, its color, its quirkiness. 1 week to surrender to the forces of HOA-enforced blandness. 1 week to absolutely, positively not comply. I, Greg Miller, was not a remover of art. I was a collector of art, a defender of artistic expression, a champion of the unconventional, and I was not about to let Patricia and her band of beige-loving bureaucrats dictate what I could and couldn't display on my own property. It wasn't just about the statues anymore. It was about principle. It was about freedom of expression. It was about the right to surround myself with things that brought me joy. Even if those things happened to include a family of ceramic frogs playing musical instruments. My internal monologue was a delightful mix of outrage, determination, and a growing fascination with the idea of using art as a weapon. "They want to take away my art?" I muttered to myself, pacing my living room. "Fine, let them try. But they're going to have to deal with the consequences." I needed a plan, a strategy, a way to fight back, to defend my artistic vision, to make Patricia Pristine's head explode. And then inspiration struck. It happened, as most of my best and worst ideas do, while I was browsing the internet, procrastinating instead of packing up my beloved statues. I was researching HOA regulations, looking for legal precedents, for cases where homeowners had successfully challenged similar restrictions. And then I stumbled upon an article about street art. Street art, murals, graffiti, the bold, colorful, dynamic art that transformed urban landscapes, that challenged authority, that made a statement. It was the antithesis of everything Patricia Pristine stood for, and it was perfect. But how to apply it to my situation? I didn't want to vandalize my own house, or anyone else's for that matter. I needed a way to bring the spirit of street art to Willow Creek, in a way that was both rebellious and technically legal. And then I looked at my garage door. My plain, white, boring, utterly unartistic garage door. It was a blank canvas, a massive blank canvas, just begging for a splash of color, a touch of rebellion, a mural. The idea was so simple, so elegant, so perfectly subversive that I almost laughed out loud. I wouldn't remove my yard art. Not all of it, anyway. I'd add to it. I'd transform my garage door into a giant, ever-changing work of art. My weapon of choice, naturally, was the HOA bylaws. I needed to make sure I wasn't breaking any existing rules, or at the very least, could argue that I wasn't. I found it. The restriction was on permanent exterior art installations. But the bylaws said nothing about temporary or changeable art. And crucially, the garage door was technically part of the house, not a separate structure or installation. "Temporary," I muttered. A slow smile spreading across my face. "Changeable." It was a loophole big enough to drive a spray paint can through. And I, Greg Miller, was about to do just that. As long as I didn't deface the actual door and could remove it. Operation Street Art was born. My plan was audacious, even for me. I wouldn't just paint a mural on my garage door. I'd turn it into a rotating exhibition of street art. I'd invite local artists to contribute, to use my garage door as their canvas, to create bold, colorful, dynamic works of art that would challenge the bland uniformity of Willow Creek. It would be a constant, ever-changing display of artistic rebellion, a giant middle finger to Patricia Pristine and her beige brigade. And I would argue, with a perfectly straight face, that it was temporary, because it could be changed, that it was part of my house, because it was on my garage door, and that it was, therefore, perfectly compliant with the HOA bylaws. I could already picture Patricia's reaction. The sputtering outrage, the vein throbbing in her forehead, the inevitable meltdown. It was a beautiful image. I was embracing the rebellious potential of art, planning for maximum impact, and fueled by a potent mixture of righteous indignation and caffeine. This was going to be fun. My first step was to find some artists. I posted a call on social media explaining my situation and my desire for revenge, and inviting local street artists to participate in my garage gallery project. The response was overwhelming. It seemed I wasn't the only one who was tired of beige conformity. I chose 3 artists for the first mural. A young woman named Maya, who specialized in bold, geometric designs, a guy named Sketch, who created intricate black and white murals, and a group of teenagers who called themselves the Rebel. Patricia Pristine's reaction to the first garage door mural was predictable and glorious. She arrived, as always, unannounced and unwelcome, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. She stood there, on my driveway, staring at the garage door, her mouth agape, her eyes wide with disbelief. The mural, created by Maya, Sketch, and the rebel artists, was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. Bold geometric shapes in vibrant colors intertwined with intricate black and white illustrations, creating a dynamic and eye-catching display. The theme, subtly, or not so subtly, mocking the HOA, featured a group of garden gnomes staging a rebellion, armed with paintbrushes and spray cans, defacing a giant beige wall. It was beautiful. "What?" Patricia finally managed to choke out, her voice a strangled whisper that quickly escalated into a shriek. "Have you done?" I emerged from the house, a picture of calm composure, holding a mug of coffee and wearing a t-shirt that read, "Art Happens." "Good morning, Patricia," I said, my voice smooth and even. "You're admiring my garage door, I presume?" "Garage door?" she sputtered, pointing a trembling finger at the vibrant display of street art. This is graffiti. You've vandalized your own property." "It's street art, Patricia," I corrected, with a perfectly straight face. "And it's perfectly legal. It's on my property, on my garage door, which, as we all know, is technically part of my house, and, as I understand it, there are no rules against artistic expression on one's own house. And since you're so into the rules, it is only temporary, not permanent." "Temporary?" she repeated, her voice reaching a pitch that only dogs, and possibly bats, could hear. "It's a crime against art." "I think it brightens up the neighborhood," I countered with a shrug. "Adds a little color, a little personality, a little something other than beige." It's unacceptable," she stammered, her face turning a shade of purple I'd previously only associated with overripe plums. "It's tacky, it's low class, it's street art." "And your point is?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Street art is a recognized art form, Patricia. It's vibrant, it's expressive, it's a reflection of our culture." It's going to attract gangs," she declared, her voice filled with a bizarre mix of fear and outrage. "Gangs?" I repeated, incredulous. "Karen, I think the only gangs we have in Willow Creek are the Garden Club and the Book Club." I'll have this thing removed," she vowed, her voice hoarse. "I'll sue you. "You'll do nothing, Patricia," I said, my voice firm, "because I haven't broken any rules. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go admire my art." I turned and walked back towards the house, leaving Patricia sputtering in impotent rage on my driveway. The emergency HOA meeting, Part 2, the graffiti gambit, was, if possible, even more ridiculous than the previous ones. Patricia, looking like she'd aged another 10 years in the past few weeks, presented her case with the fervor of a prosecutor trying a capital murder case. She changed the HOA bylaws to include the garage door as a restricted area. This garage door graffiti," she declared, her voice shaking with emotion, "is an affront to everything Willow Creek stands for. It's vandalism. It's a gateway to chaos." She'd even brought in a so-called art critic, a guy who looked suspiciously like her hairdresser, who testified about the negative impact of street art on property values and the importance of maintaining a cohesive aesthetic in residential communities. It was all nonsense, of course, and I could tell even some of the board members were starting to roll their eyes. Then it was my turn. "Miss Pristine," I began, addressing the board with a calm, reasonable demeanor that was, of course, entirely fake. "Seems to be under the impression that I've somehow violated the HOA bylaws. I assure you, I have not. I presented my defense meticulously and methodically. I cited the bylaws, again, emphasizing that while permanent exterior art installations were restricted, my garage door mural was temporary and part of the house. I presented examples of famous street art from around the world, highlighting its cultural significance and its growing acceptance as a legitimate art form. I argued that my garage gallery was a form of free expression protected by the First Amendment. I may have stretched the truth a bit there. And, just for good measure, I'd invited the artists who'd created the first mural, Maya, sketch, and a representative from the Rebel artists to speak about their work. They talked about the creative process, the inspiration behind the design, and the positive impact of art on communities. The other board members were, to put it mildly, divided. Some were clearly still loyal to Patricia, but their support was waning. Others looked confused, overwhelmed by the sheer audacity of my project. And a few, I suspected, were secretly admiring my boldness and the vibrant colors of the mural. Then, a woman from the back of the room stood up. She was an art teacher at the local high school, a resident of Willow Creek I'd spoken to briefly during the mural's creation. "I have to disagree with Miss Pristine," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I think Mr. Miller's garage door is amazing. It's creative, it's colorful, it's a breath of fresh air in this otherwise rather monotonous neighborhood. It's a conversation starter. It's a form of community engagement. And frankly, it's far more interesting than another beige wall." That was the final blow. The board, facing a potential lawsuit, a public relations nightmare, and the growing realization that Patricia had completely lost it, voted to table the discussion, pending further review. The meeting ended in chaos, with Patricia screaming about the decline of Western civilization, and me, Greg Miller, the street art rebel, walking out with a smug, but well-deserved, I thought, smile on my face. But Patricia, like a particularly stubborn and art-hating cockroach, wasn't about to give up. What followed was a period of escalating absurdity that I can only describe as the art war. Patricia, obsessed with getting rid of my garage door murals, or at the very least making my life miserable, tried every tactic she could think of. She filed complaints with the city, claiming the murals were a zoning violation, a safety hazard, and a public nuisance. The city inspectors came, they inspected, and they found nothing. My garage door art was perfectly legal. She tried to organize a neighborhood petition to have it removed. She went door to door, armed with her clipboard and her "think of the children" speech, trying to convince people that my murals were a threat to their property values and their way of life. The petition failed miserably. Most people either politely declined to sign or slammed the door in her face. Some even commissioned murals for their own garage doors. She even, I suspect, attempted some minor acts of vandalism. I found a few, easily removed, "Keep Willow Creek Beautiful" stickers plastered on my garage door. And one morning, I woke up to find a suspicious-looking pile of glitter on my driveway. Apparently, she was hoping to make it look tacky. Of course, I had security cameras everywhere, capturing her every move. And I, of course, responded in kind. Not with vandalism, oh no, I was above that. I responded with more art. I changed the garage door mural frequently, each time with a new theme and a new, subtle jab at the HOA. One week, it was a giant psychedelic landscape. The next, it was a tribute to famous artists. Van Gogh, Monet, Picasso, all rendered in a distinctly street art style. I even did a mural featuring a portrait of Mittens, my cat, depicted as a majestic, graffiti-covered lion. I expanded the art to other parts of my house. I painted my fence in bright, bold colors. I added more sculptures to my yard, including a giant, inflatable rubber ducky just to annoy Patricia. I even installed some colorful, flashing lights on my roof, creating a nightly light show that was visible from space, or at least from Patricia's bedroom window. I hosted art appreciation events in my front yard, inviting neighbors and local artists to admire my ever-changing garage gallery. I served refreshments, including graffiti cookies, frosted cookies decorated with edible spray paint, and played music, loudly, but within legal limits, of course. And, because I couldn't resist, I created a website and a social media page showcasing the rotating garage door murals and documenting my ongoing battle with the HOA. It became a minor internet sensation, attracting followers from all over the world who cheered me on and offered suggestions for new mural themes. It was a glorious, ridiculous, utterly over-the-top spectacle. And with each passing day, with each new mural, with each new escalation, I could feel Patricia's frustration growing, her power waning, her sanity slipping. The garage door had become more than just a canvas. It was a symbol of defiance, a testament to the power of creative and slightly unhinged resistance. And I, Greg Miller, the accidental street artist, was winning. It's been a year since the Great Garage Door Graffiti War, as the local paper dubbed it. A year since I, Greg Miller, transformed my ordinary garage door into an extraordinary canvas for street art, defying the beige tyranny of the Willow Creek HOA and its art-hating president, Patricia Pristine. And, I have to say, it's been a colorful year. My garage door, or rather my garage gallery, has become a local landmark. People actually drive by just to see it. I've had tourists stop and take pictures, art students sketching the latest mural, and even a few art critics, real ones this time, writing about my subversive suburban statement. There's a waiting list. Local artists clamor for their chance to add their art to the rotation. It's become a symbol of artistic rebellion, a testament to the power of creativity, and a constant, vibrant reminder of Patricia Pristine's spectacular defeat. Patricia? She's gone. Vanished. Sold her house and moved away, presumably to a community with no art whatsoever. I heard a rumor that she's now living in a gated community where all the houses are painted the exact same shade of beige, and the only unnoved art is a meticulously trimmed hedge shaped like a topiary poodle. I can only imagine how that's going for her. Willow Creek, as a whole, has undergone a transformation. It's still a suburban neighborhood with mostly manicured lawns and mostly well-behaved residents. But there's a difference, a splash of color, a spark of creativity, a sense that maybe, just maybe, it's okay to be a little different. Other homeowners have started to express themselves, adding colorful flowers to their gardens, displaying slightly less controversial art in their yards, and even, in a few cases, painting their own garage doors, although none quite as boldly as mine, of course. A new family moved into Patricia's old house a few months ago. The new neighbor, a young woman named Emily, stopped by one afternoon while I was, curating my latest garage door exhibit, a collaboration between a local muralist and a group of elementary school students. It was abstract. "So," Emily said, gesturing towards the garage door with a curious smile, "why is your garage door a constantly changing art exhibit?" I grinned, stepping back to admire the currently rather chaotic display of colorful shapes and figures. "Oh," I said casually, "just an HOA misunderstanding." Emily raised an eyebrow. "A misunderstanding?" "Yeah," I said, nodding. "Long story. Involves a few garden gnomes, a power-hungry HOA president, and a whole lot of spray paint. Let's just say things escalated." Emily laughed, shaking her head. "Well," she said, "I think it's amazing. It's unique. And it definitely makes the neighborhood more interesting." "That's what I told them," I replied, feeling a surge of pride. And it's a great way to support local artists. And as I stood there, in front of my ever-changing, ever-evolving garage gallery, the sun setting behind it, casting long, colorful shadows across my still art-filled yard, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. I'd fought the good fight. I'd defended my right to express myself, to be creative, to have a little fun. And I'd won. The HOA was still around, of course, but they were different, more cautious, more respectful, and definitely less likely to mess with my art. But just in case, I've been brainstorming some new ideas. Maybe I'll turn my entire house into a work of art, a giant, multicolored, ever-changing mural that wraps around the entire structure. Or perhaps I'll install a series of interactive sculptures in my yard, inviting neighbors to contribute to the artistic landscape of Willow Creek. The possibilities are endless. And as long as there are HOAs and beige-loving bureaucrats, I, Greg Miller, the accidental art activist, will be ready, armed with my spray paint, my imagination, and a healthy dose of rebellious spirit. Bring on the next challenge. My canvas is ready.